sometimes controversial, always politically incorrect, and pro-life without exception, without compromise, and without apology. It's the Pro-Life America podcast with your hosts, Sarah Waits and the president of Life Dynamics, Mark Crutcher.
Hello guys, welcome back to the show. As you heard, I'm Mark Crutcher, and lurking nearby is my lovely co-host Sarah Waits.
Hello everyone. So Mark, I don't know if you know this, but this is our 125th episode.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
No, it's amazing how time flies by. I keep thinking about that at my age. I look back and say, what the devil happened to my life? Where did it go?
Who is this dude in the mirror?
Yeah, who is that old guy? Who's that old geezer in the mirror? Yeah,
oh boy.
It is amazing. And the older you get, the faster things go. You wouldn't think it'd be different between one age group and another, but it is.
Yeah.
The older you get, the years go by like pickets in a fence, you know.
And on that happy note.
Yeah, on that happy note.
Just want to say thank you to all our listeners who have been listening to us for the 125 episodes.
Our long-suffering listeners.
Yes. And for those who are new, we just want to take this time to let you know that if you have any questions about abortion or the pro-life position, any of that, or you even have something you just want us to talk about, make sure you go to lifedynamics.com/podcast. There's a form right there on the page where you can submit your show suggestions. And we have made entire shows out of people's suggestions.
Absolutely. So. We love hearing from you. Now, what we don't love hearing about, this story out of Nebraska. A woman, Shauna Fernando, she's a lovely one.
She took her daughter for an abortion.
Right. Well, we say one, but you got to believe there's more than one.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's possible either way.
What we've seen in the past is that this is a pattern that keeps repeating itself. But anyway, her 12-year-old daughter was being raped by her boyfriend. Not the daughter's boyfriend, the mother's boyfriend.
Yes.
Got her pregnant.
The mother took her to an abortion clinic.
And see, the reason I say this has been going on for a longer period of time, this was over 2 years ago that she took for the abortion, the one that we know about.
The mother claims in the trial that she did not know about the sexual abuse.
But the daughter says she did.
The daughter says that she told her about it. And this is, to me, this is one of the kickers. While the girl was going through the effects of the chemical abortion, she had taken the pills and having the abortion, her mom and stepdad left her at home and went to church.
Yeah, went to church.
Your 12-year-old daughter is at home going through a potentially dangerous chemical abortion, and you leave her at home and go to church with a man who's raping your daughter.
Right. A lovely person.
This is mind-boggling on so many levels.
And we also know that the abortion clinic did not adhere to the state's mandatory reporting laws.
How do we know this, Mark?
Because it went on for 2 years after the abortion.
Yep.
So if they had reported like they're required by law to do, it would have stopped then.
Yeah.
And of course, as you know, we did a major study on this several years ago.
Yep. If you want to go see that report, you want to see the investigations, the tapes, or the actual cases that we compiled about this, go to childpredators.com.
Right. We contacted every Planned Parenthood facility in the United States, every freestanding abortion clinic in the United States.
You wound up talking to what, 816?
Well, we talked to about 850, but we actually recorded 813 at the conversation. Sometimes you got one answer line for several abortion clinics, so you didn't have the same number of abortion clinics that you had recordings. We had 813 recordings, and you can listen to every one of them on the website. Our caller was a woman in her 20s, but she sounds like she's 12, and she posed as a 13-year-old girl pregnant by a 22-year-old adult seeking an abortion in order to conceal this from her parents and from the authorities. That was the pretext that we used.
And we need to mention, too, that at no point did she say that her parents would become abusive, violent, kick her out of the house, anything.
She just didn't want them to know. And they were afraid of the authorities finding out because the guys...
It's an illegal situation.
They're legally bound to report that under the mandatory reporting laws. Now, some
because
states...
a minor cannot legally consent to sex.
And I want to get into that in a minute so most people understand fully what's going on here. But 91% of these clinics agreed not to report, and a bunch of them gave her advice on how to keep other people from reporting.
Yeah, on the website, you can go and listen to a whole bunch of these tapes and what they said. But I want to play you one from Iowa. Listen to this.
Hi, thanks for holding. I can help you. And you said you were 14, is that correct?
Well, I'll be 14 in March.
Okay, and are your parents aware that this is going to take place?
Well, no, they can't find out, because, like, the problem is, like, my boyfriend's 22 and we're going to get married and everything, but they can't find out because they hate my boyfriend. They think he's too old for me.
Well, why can't you get married and have the baby?
Well, because we have to...
Like go out of state or something?
Well, I don't know. We just haven't had a chance to do that yet.
Okay. What are you going to do as far as this judicial bypass goes? That's what I'm concerned about, too, because you have to have judges' permission, which is fine. You can get judges' permission. You have to come to Iowa City, and I have to give you another number in which to do that, because you go in front of a judge, and then he grants permission for you to have an abortion without your parents finding out.
Okay.
My problem is that if I were you, and this is just strictly off the record, if I were you, I would not say anything about your boyfriend being 22 years old.
Oh, okay.
I would be concerned that because he is, and because you're almost 14, that there may be some repercussions there.
What do you mean, like what?
Like they would say, you know, it's against the law for 22-year-olds to have intercourse with 13, 14-year-olds.
But we're in love. I don't understand. Like, we're going to get married. I don't...
No, I totally understand, but it's like the law says it's against the law. You know, I think, I mean, who cares, you know, how old anybody is? That's my own personal feeling, but the law in the state of Iowa says that anybody over 21, over 18 actually, can be prosecuted for having intercourse with someone who is under 18.
So he's advising her and her boyfriend to lie to the judge about a judicial bypass.
Right. And let me make sure people understand something. The call that you just gave is by far not the worst one that we had. Mm-hmm. It's a typical call.
Yeah.
And many of them gave her very specific information about how to avoid getting caught, how to avoid her boyfriend going to prison. Some of them even told her that when she came into the abortion clinic, don't let him come with you. Let him sit out in the car and wait for you. Don't bring him inside.
There was one call where she had called and was telling the person about her situation, and she said, "Stop. I don't want to know any more information because if you tell me any more, we will have to call the police. So do not," she tells the girl, "do not tell me anything else."
Right. The bottom line here is, I've said this many times, and I did hundreds of interviews on this back when we first released all this information. And I always said the same thing because I was hoping Planned Parenthood would sue me. Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation, these clinics under the umbrella of these two organizations, are running a nationwide pedophile protection racket. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They are protecting men who rape children. And we proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, if what I said is not true, this is libel and slander on its face. They should sue me. I've been trying to get them to sue me ever since the day we first did this, and they won't do it because they know if they
Those
did,
jerks.
we would get discovery on them.
Yeah.
And they couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
The fact is they're running a nationwide pedophile protection racket. And this example here in Omaha, Nebraska, this is a classic example of what we found when we did this investigation. It's not uncommon at all for women to have a boyfriend or a second husband, and for the child to have then a stepfather or just a guy that's living with them to be having sex with these children, and the mother to know about it and to actually facilitate the ongoing rape of their own children. This is so incredibly outrageous. This woman was given, 10 to 14 years in prison?
Yeah, 10 to 14 years.
For allowing this to happen. And the guy, got life? And I get 60 to 80.
Yeah, 60 to 80 years, which is pretty much life.
That's life.
Unless
right.
they let him out early for good behavior. I don't know what their rules on that is, considering the nature of the charges.
This is a typical scenario that we see happening every day. We had a case very similar to this one right here in Dallas during the time we were releasing the studies, where this girl was being raped by her mother's boyfriend, and all three of them went to the abortion clinic
Together.
The boyfriend, the mother, and the child were taken to the abortion clinic together. And the mother and the boyfriend stayed with the child during the counseling, and she was never allowed to say anything. But he was raping her, and the mother knew it and was protecting the boyfriend.
Disgusting.
And even when the mother's not involved, which in most of these cases the mother won't be involved, because any decent mother is going to...
Any decent mother is like...
Somebody's going to be
Mama's
dead.
going to jail. What happens next to the man? Mama's going to jail.
Right. One of the things that people have a hard time understanding was whether these people are truly violating the state's mandatory reporting laws. And I can assure you absolutely positively they are. And they'll say, well, let's say like in this case, the mother takes the girl for an abortion. But let's say that the girl doesn't tell the clinic that she's being raped by her stepfather.
She may not.
Or boyfriend. She may not.
In our report, the actual cases, there was a man named Martin Castillo who was abusing the 14-year-old daughter of his girlfriend. He warned the girl that if she told anyone what he was doing, he would kill her and her mother. He forced her to have 3 abortions. Now, the abortion clinics clearly did not report since she was continually raped until about 2006, when she finally told her mother and aunt. So that girl, she's not going to tell.
The girl does not have to tell you, or no one else has to tell you, that she's being raped by an adult. If you have a minor girl in your facility as a medical provider, and she is demonstrating that she's sexually active, she's seeking an abortion, she's seeking a pregnancy test,
Birth control.
Treatment for an STD, birth control devices. That child is telling you she's sexually active. If she's a minor, she cannot consent to that sexual activity. So by definition, that's evidence of child sexual abuse. And it must be reported and it must be investigated. And it doesn't matter what the girl says. It's irrelevant. The analogy that I often drew was, and still do, if someone goes into an emergency room with a gunshot wound, the emergency room personnel are required to report that to the authorities, no matter what he says.
Yeah.
Let's say this guy says, look, I accidentally shot myself.
I was cleaning my gun and I accidentally shot myself.
Or I was out hunting and I accidentally got shot. That's fine. And that may be what happened. It doesn't matter. They still have to report it because they are not investigators, they're reporters.
And that's the thing. You'll hear people say, well, the girl didn't tell him, or the girl may be pregnant by somebody her own age, and we don't want to get this whole hoopla started if it's just some teen boy having sex with a teen girl. Look, they don't have time or the resources to do the investigation. That's not their job. They're not investigators.
Right.
Their job is to report it to the authorities who will do the investigating. If no crime has been committed, everything is fine. But the law is there for the girls who are being raped, who are being preyed upon by adult men.
Well, when my daughter Sheila was, I think, 5 or 6 years old, she fell off a jungle gym and broke her wrist. I wasn't there. My wife was there. And she took her to the emergency room. They had to contact they have a representative at the hospital. They had to come in and talk to Sheila. They even required that my wife go out of the room. They talked to Sheila. They verified that, I was playing on the jungle gym, I fell off and I broke my wrist. And it doesn't matter what anybody tells the emergency personnel, it's the investigators that they're supposed to talk to. And they determined that, she fell, so everything was fine. The same thing applies here. You cannot have a situation in which a minor child can give evidence of sexual activity without that being evidence of sexual assault because she can't consent. She's having sex without her consent. So it has to be investigated. Now, it may turn out that she's having sex with a 13-year-old kid next door. Well, the authorities will look at that. In most states, that won't even be illegal. That falls under what they call Romeo and Juliet laws. It won't be illegal. They're not going to charge anybody. But what they might also find out is that she's being raped by her mother's 40-year-old boyfriend. And let's understand something. In America today, we have an epidemic. We found out when we did our research. And by the way, some people in the abortion industry have done the same research and they've come to the same conclusions. They just don't do anything about it. 60 to 80% of all the girls in this country, 15 years old and younger, who get pregnant, were not impregnated by other minors. They were impregnated by adults. 60 to 80%. So that means it's far more likely when you have a girl in an abortion clinic who's pregnant and she's a minor, it's far more likely that she was the victim of statutory rape than with the relationship with another boy her age.
And to somebody who thinks that these clinics maybe just mistaken, and they're not reporting because they just mistakenly assume that it's a teenage boy. 44-year-old John Blanks began having sex with his daughter when she was 13. Okay, the abuse continued almost nightly until she was 18 when she revealed it to her coach. Authorities were notified. In the legal proceedings, it was revealed she had become pregnant at 16, and he forced her to undergo an abortion at a Planned Parenthood clinic. She testified that even though her father helped her complete the paperwork at the clinic, signed the consent forms for the procedure, and remained nearby during almost every step, she was able to tell the clinic staff that he was forcing her to have sex with them. Despite her telling them this, they still did not report.
Right. They're not going to. People say, well, why would they favor the man? Who's
He's
the one
got
with
the
the
money.
money?
Yeah.
He's the one with the money. This is the largest criminal conspiracy in the history of the United States.
Yeah.
When you look at the sheer numbers of girls we're talking about here, and it's going on every day. And the most frustrating thing for us was, and still is to this day, that we can't get anything done about it. Nobody seems to worry about this until it's their daughter.
And see, that boggles my mind.
The abortion lobby has such a stranglehold on the American political system. And all of these politicians, if the well-being of Planned Parenthood collides with the well-being of these minor children, these little girls, they're going to go with Planned Parenthood. There is something that Planned Parenthood has on these people that is almost Svengali-like or something. It's very strange.
Well, you said that when you were talking to some authorities about these situations and lawyers about this, but that there were some people who showed this kind of wink and nod kind of situation
absolutely.
where, well, the girl consented, and so even though technically it's illegal, she's in love and all that jazz.
I had a long conversation with a woman who was a state's attorney in Connecticut. There was a high-profile case up there. Just was about the time we were releasing the child predator information. There was a high-profile case up there where a 72-year-old man was having sex with a little, I think she was 11 or 12-year-old, and she was taken to 3 different abortion clinics, none of which reported. The state's attorney, who's a raving pro-abort, called me, and we had a conversation about this based on the calls that we made into Connecticut. And I could not believe, I had pulled up the state statute for Connecticut before I talked to her. I had it in front of me. This woman did not understand the state statute on mandatory reporting.
You're kidding.
And
the attorney for that state had no idea.
She's the state's attorney, and she did not understand it. And she kept saying, well, this girl never said that this guy was abusing her or was raping her. And I said, well, it doesn't matter. She can't consent. Well, she did consent. I said, she can't consent. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And we sacrifice our children to the god of the abortion industry and Planned Parenthood and all these people, whoever they worship, whatever they worship. But we turn right around and talk about how much we love our kids and how much we want to protect our kids.
I really wonder if that attorney you talked to, if she would have had that same wink and nod perception if it was her own child.
If it's her own child, right.
And you know, here's the thing. Girls who are sexually involved with adults are more at risk for these things. You investigated this and you report this in the child predator report. These girls are more likely to be at risk to have multiple sex partners, engage in dangerous sexual behaviors, become pregnant, drop out of school, run away from home, end up on welfare, be estranged from friends and family, be in physically abusive relationships, become divorced, and abuse drugs and alcohol. And these are just some of the things that you found.
I kept on hearing these people. I remember one particular attorney that I talked to, another female attorney, and she said, well, Mr. Crutcher, you need to understand that 13 and 14-year-old girls today aren't like 13 and 14-year-old girls were in the 1950s or whatever.
How are they different?
She said they're sexually active at an earlier age. They're sexually active with more people. And so the laws that were written to protect those girls in that age don't really apply in this time. I said, well, wait a minute. Let me make a couple of things clear to you. First off, physically, 13-year-old girls are not any different than they've ever been, than they were 1,000 years ago. But the main thing is, if you think that it's okay for these 40 and 50-year-old men to be having sex with these old 12, 13-year-old girls, then you need to change the law. But in the interim, this is what the law is. And one of the most incredible statements I've heard, she says, really, what's the difference if she's going to be sexually active, how old the person she's sexually active with?
What?
She said, "What if she's sexually active? How much difference is it? Is she sexually active with a 16-year-old or a 60-year-old?"
Because in a 13-year-old having sex with a 13-year-old, it's not a great situation because they're young and they don't understand the dynamics of the relationship they're in. But when you have a 70-year-old person or 60-year-old person having sex with a 13-year-old, who has the power in that relationship?
That guy's got all the power.
He has all the power. It's not a healthy relationship. You cannot have a healthy relationship with that kind of power dynamic.
But Planned Parenthood continues to protect these people and the rest of the abortion side. It's not just Planned Parenthood.
Not to mention, we have another report that's called Under the Radar Violence. And in that report, it talks about how men, just like in the child predator situation, use abortion as a safety net. In the report, some of the victims who were in there, we only reported on the females who were killed for refusing to have abortions.
Right.
In that report, some of the girls were as young as 13 years old?
Yeah.
14. Some of the girls
If they
in there.
refuse to have an abortion, he'll kill them.
Yeah, some of the females in there were as young as 14 years old.
Now, here's the thing that I want to make sure people watch out for on this deal. And if we see it, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
It's been brought up in this particular case, in this deal in Nebraska, that the abortion clinic clearly did not do the mandatory reporting.
Because otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to be raped for 2 more years.
2 more years. Let's see what the authorities do about this. We now know for a fact that the abortion clinic she went to, and she can tell them which one it was. I'm sure they already know. Where did she go? And was there a report made? If there wasn't a report made, these people are responsible for the continuing sexual abuse of that child.
Yeah. And I guarantee you she's not alone.
Oh, absolutely not. One of the most egregious examples we had, and we've talked about this, was a guy named George Joseph England.
Oh, yeah.
He was employed by a company that had offices in Vietnam. And he retired or quit or whatever, got fired when he was in Vietnam.
Long and short of it is he bought a girl overseas and brought her to the U.S.
He purchased a 5-year-old child,
Yeah.
5-year-old girl. He began having sex with her the day he bought her. Then he took her with him. He had jobs in other parts of the world. He took her with him. He wound up in California, wound up back in the United States in California.
Raped one of her friends.
3 of her friends.
Oh, 3 of her friends. Sorry,
She
yeah.
had 2 friends. 2 of them were age 9. One of them was age 10. When she got up about that age, she had these 2 little friends. He raped 3 of these little girls. He wound up getting indicted for that. Even in California, they kind of frown on this. Well, he escaped.
No. They let him go.
They let him out on bond. While he was awaiting his trial, they let him out. They didn't even take the girl away. He runs off with this girl. He escapes to Florida, changes his name. He takes the girl with him to Florida. And they continue living there until
He's
she got
continuing to rape her.
He continued to rape her. He got her pregnant. The estimates are between 8 and 9 times over a 6-year period of time. He took her for abortions every time. No report was ever made. She eventually, when she got to be, I think she was 18, she had a friend whose father happened to be an FBI agent. And she told this girl what was going on, that this guy wasn't her daddy. He was the guy who purchased her in Vietnam. And this little girl told her daddy, and this whole thing collapsed. And George Joseph England went to the state penitentiary in Florida. And then California now's got a warrant holding on him. So he's never getting out of jail.
Yeah.
When he's out in Florida, he'll be shipped off to California. So he's never getting
Provided they don't let him out on bond again.
Florida may say, we're not sending him back to you because you let him
You
go.
dropped the ball the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, let me make the point. What's important here at this juncture is what does the state of Nebraska do about this particular situation?
Yeah.
And we're going to watch this closely. And my suspicion is they're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they know for a fact that this mandatory reporting law was ignored, and that mandatory reporting law led to this girl's continually to be raped. They're not going to do anything. You watch and see. But we'll see.
You know, the sad thing is a law is only as good as it's enforced.
Yep.
If you have it on paper, but you don't do anything about it, it is meaningless.
Yeah, they're protecting the abortion industry. Who's protecting these men? That's the bottom line here.
We talked about a couple episodes back about a Texas man who was finally being arrested and charged because he was raping children. And it was discovered in the investigation after the first little boy actually came forward that in 95, he had impregnated a 12-year-old girl, took her into an abortion clinic, and obviously the abortion clinic never reported because not only did he not go to jail for that, but he continued to rape children up until 2020.
Right.
This allows predators to continually hurt not only the current victims, but future victims as well.
Yeah. One of the cases we had, this guy was raping the daughter of his girlfriend, who was 12 at the time. He got her pregnant and took her out of the state for an abortion. Took her back there again 6 weeks later for another abortion. He'd gotten her pregnant a second time, took her back, not 6 weeks, 12 weeks or something like that. Anyway, took her back for a second abortion to the same place, talked to the same people. No report was made. The mother eventually found out about it. He went to prison. We actually went to the prison and interviewed him.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And he admitted, he told our attorney that went and interviewed him, that girl was starting to age out for him. She was starting to get a little bit too old because she had turned 15 by this time. But she had a 9-year-old sister that was waiting in the wings, and he was going to go after her 9-year-old sister as soon as he aged out with this other one. So these guys continually do this. This is once they start having sex with these little kids, they don't stop. They have to be stopped. And that's what's not happening because of the guilt of Planned Parenthood and the rest of these abortion clinics and the authorities who won't do anything about it. Anyway,
Absolutely.
that's all the time we got for this. Like we said earlier, if you have a suggestion for a show that you'd like to see, or you just have questions about abortion or the abortion issue or the
Or
battle.
more about this.
Or the history, or more about this subject or the history of the pro-life movement, whatever. Any question you have, be sure and let us know so we can deal with it. Because we're here to serve you. We're here to serve your interest. We're not here for our own good. So
Additionally, you can submit that question at lifedynamics.com/podcast. There's a form right there on the page. Also, on the episode page of each episode that we release on our website, there's a place where you can leave comments. You could drop something there if you want to. So, like I said, get us those questions and we'll answer them.
right. Anyway, that's all the time I have. You got anything else?
No, I think I've pretty much said all I can on
Our
this
blood
deal.
pressure is through the roof.
We better get Mark off before he falls out of his chair from
Right. Anyway,
high blood pressure.
Until next Thursday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight
We're here to win.
because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.